Next, I'd like to talk about the second example. So as you can see on the finished product, for example 2, we have a line chart and we have the number of users over time. So it ranges from 500 to 3,500, and it's sample data from 2008 to 2012 about how many unique users a website has. All right, so now if you scroll down in the app.js, we have our starter code here, and let's get started. So the first thing that we want to do is set up the size of the line chart. So you can see here I've set up the margins for the top, right, bottom, and left, as well as the width and the height. And you can change these really easily later on to change the size of your line chart. Next, as you can see, I'm going to parse the data from the file. So let's talk a little bit about the file that we're going to be using first of all. So here I have in the code, you can look, it's data.tsv. I have date and users, and I have a long list of dates and the number of users that visited the site for that particular day. All right, so this is a built-in function from D3. We have d3.time.format, and then we have the format setting, and then we're going to parse that. If you want to look up more details on that, you can look at the D3 API on the website. So now we're going to set the scales. So to do that, we're going to set our x to be equal to d3.time.scale. And then we're going to chain on .range. And our range is going to be from 0 to the width. Similarly, we're going to set our y range. And we're going to say y is equal to d3.scale.linear. And we're going to say that the range is going to be from height to 0. And if you think about it, this makes sense. So we're using this time function here that matches with the times in our data set. And for the y, we are going to be using the number of users. So that's just going to be a linear relationship. Time is something special because it looks at all the different data in here and it determines, what the date actually means. And so it's going to say, yeah, well, this is there we have from 2008 to 2012, and then this is how these should be spaced out. Next, we're going to create our axes. So to do that, we're going to set our var x-axis equal to d3.svg.axis. We're going to tell it that the scale is x, and we're going to orient it on the bottom. Next, we're going to do our y-axis. We're going to say that's d3.svg.axis. Our scale is going to be y. We're going to orient that on the left-hand side. And now we've set up our axes. So now we're going to do the harder part, which is actually constructing the line using points from the data. So basically, we're going to have it D3 is going to automatically draw the line based on the x and y coordinates that we have in our data. So if you look at our data, we have our date and our users. And what I have here is I'm going to create the line. I'm going to say that it's going to be a new SVG line from D3. And the x coordinate is going to be whatever I have for the d.date. And my y coordinate is going to be whatever I have for the d.users. And then after that, I'm going to create the actual entire SVG. And so to do that, I'm going to select the .line chart. And as you can see in the HTML, I've created a div here, and I've given it a class of line chart. I'm selecting that line chart and then appending this SVG. And I'm going to set the width to be the width plus the margin. Next, I'm going to add a group to that. And I'm going to transform it, and I'm going to translate it by the margin left and the margin top. So what this is doing is just kind of organizing everything on the page, and you can play with those numbers to get whatever you want for the desired look for your visualization. And then after that, I'm going to actually bring in the data. So up until this point, I haven't actually imported the data. And to do that now, I'm going to say d3.tsv. So this is a function built into D3. It accepts a TSV file. And you can edit those in Excel, and you can sort it and change values and things to match your visualization. So I'm bringing in data.tsv, which is what I have in my folder, and I'm going to do a callback function, and I'm going to have an error data. So I'm saying if there's an error, throw the error, and then now I'm going to have to traverse through the data. So I'm going to say data.forEach. So for each thing in the data, I'm going to have my d.date to be equal to parse date, the d.date. My d.users is going to be equal to plus d_users. All right, now after that, I want to establish the domain for the x and y axes. So I'm going to say x.domain is d3.extent. All extent does is find the minimum and maximum value in the array. And so that's what I'm checking for here. So that's how I'm going to set the domain for the x and y. I'm going to get the minimum and maximum of the date and the users. And then I'm going to add the groups. So I'm going to say svg.append a new group. I'm going to give it an attribute of a class, and the class is going to be the x-axis. Another attribute. I'm going to transform it. That transformation is going to be a translate from 0 plus the height, and I'm going to call that the x-axis. Next, I'm going to svg append another group, and that's going to have an attribute of class and the y-axis. And I'm going to call that y-axis. To that, I'm going to append some text. And this is going to be for the text on the y-axis. So as you can see, here I have users unique, and I'm going to put that on the y-axis, or close to the y-axis. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees to make it look better on the page. I'm also going to set its y value to be 6. I'm going to set its dy value. I'm also going to style this. You don't have to worry about this too much. The important part is I'm going to have this say users, and then finally to the SVG, I'm going to append the path using the datum, passing in the data. I'm going to set another attribute, and that's going to be that the class will be line. And this is one of the last components to actually building the line for the line chart. I'm going to set one last attribute, and that's going to be D, and that's going to be line. I'm going to save and reload. And as you can see, I have my users unique on the side, and I'm on the bottom I have my years, and I'm using my data. If we look in the CSS, we can style this even further. So obviously we can set like the stroke, so we can say, let's say if we wanted this light blue instead of light green. We can set it to be blue, and we could also make it a thicker line, so we could set that to be stroke width to be 3 pixels. Okay, that's way too much. But you get the idea. And I hope you learn from the examples and are inspired to create your own. And also make sure to check out all the other examples on d3js.org. All right, thank you.